Says I'm live. Just gonna check on my phone here to make sure this StreamYard thingy works. Okay. Now my internet for some reason isn't working. Oh, here we go. Oh, there I am. I see myself. Okay. So welcome to this live stream. It's part of a series called Prioritize Protein Trainings. And this series is all about the benefits of protein, the health benefits of protein. And in the first training today, I'm going to be sharing with you all about how I ended up obese on a lacto-vegetarian diet and sort of all the journey that I went through to why I became a vegetarian in the first place, and then why I stopped being a vegetarian, and just sort of like all the different mindsets and things that I had to go through on that journey to open myself up to the possibility of reconsidering that maybe the diet that I had assumed was the perfect, most healthiest diet on the planet wasn't actually what my body needed anymore. So before I go into the coming up trainings, I wanted to give us like a systems view, like from a bird's eye view, look at this whole dynamic of being on a plant-based diet versus a meat-based diet. And there's just so many different things that are involved in this that it can be really, really easy to get sort of pigeonhole yourself into a mindset that is not necessarily going to work for you in the long term because of the dietary dogma and the things that we typically believe when we're in a sort of like a pendulum around a very controversial topic, right? So there's a lot of different extremes of opinion out there. And those are, of course, are going to be the people that are the most passionate, that are going to be out there doing all the teaching, all the experts on, whether you should eat a plant-based diet, vegetarian, vegan diet versus a like more of an omnivorous diet or a carnivore diet. Some people aren't even familiar with what that is because it's sort of like the new, kid on the block after keto is eating a carnivore diet, which is eating just meat. And some people, of course, include eggs and dairy and all that stuff as well. But for me, I had 13 years experience as a vegetarian where I had actually 2 pregnancies through this period. So for 13 years, I ate nothing but plants plus dairy, so butter and cheese. I did not drink milk, yogurt, of course. I included. So no eggs in that 13 years. So I had a diet devoid of meat and devoid of eggs, but included dairy. So I wasn't a vegan, although sometimes I dipped into veganism, but not for a super long time or anything. So when I first became health conscious was because I ended up getting sick with mono. And what I discovered was that there were natural remedies that I could use to help myself. And in the process of incorporating these natural remedies into my body, I also thought, well, I'm not just going to like take vitamins, like I'm going to actually change my nutrition, what I'm eating. So I literally spent my days and evenings and weekends and as much as possible in coffee shops, libraries. This was before the age of the internet. So I had to like read everything from books. And I was trying to learn how I could get healthy because I didn't want to take, a year off of work. As I had heard other people who had mono had like serious situations, which they couldn't even like hold down jobs and had to like basically go to bed for a couple years. So I didn't want to do that. So I went to the health food store, this wonderful lady. She opened this book called Prescriptions for Nutritional Medicine or Nutritional Healing. And she took me to the mono section, showed me all the supplements. I bought as many as I could afford at the time. She gave me a 30% discount because this is someone who genuinely cared about helping people. And I started taking those supplements and then started doing all that research and discovered that I wanted to eat entirely a diet of whole foods. That made like the most sense. But in the process, I discovered vegetarianism. I read this book called Diet for a Small Planet. This is like 20 years ago. I'm 46 now. So Diet for a New America was another one. And in that, I discovered not only like how to eat a whole foods diet, but I discovered factory farming, right? And, you know, as soon as I found out what happened to animals in these big corporate factory farms, I was like, no, like I'm not going to eat that. That's terrible because I don't want to be, you know, putting my money into an industry that is treating animals in that way. So then because I had that mindset, then I had to, you know, then I wanted to believe that I could eat a totally, a diet that's devoid of meat and eggs and even dairy, right? And be completely healthy. And that actually it was the best diet for me. So I had that bias that, you know, I didn't want to hurt animals. So I wanted it to be true. I remember going home to visit my family and telling them about what I had learned about factory farming and thinking, oh my God, like these people are just going to like be like as disgusted and horrified as I am. And, you know, we're all going to stop eating meat. And that's not what happened. Basically, it's like you could just see, you know, when people's eyes glaze over, like it just went over their like head, like, you know, Sherry's gone crazy. You know, she moved to Vancouver. Now she's a hippie. She doesn't eat meat. Right. Like it just didn't even land. And, you know, I was kind of horrified. I was like, how can people not care about how their choices are impacting another being? Right. So, you know, back in those days, that was crazy to say, right? Like it was not okay to like even think that. Now, you know, in 2022, there's a lot of different subjects that are extremely controversial where, you know, we're making decisions based on how they affect others, right? And so many of those things are positive. So I spent the next 13 years eating a vegetarian diet. Again, not including eggs and meat, but I still included dairy. So because I believe that a lot of people have this experience, they assume that when they've gone vegetarian, when they've made this diet change, or actually any diet change, I'm going to get into like sort of how the body responds to change. And people confuse making a positive difference in your diet, like attributing it all to one thing. And I assumed that it was my vegetarian diet that was making me healthy, that meaning the absence of meat. Okay. And a lot of people believe that. They think, okay, if I just take out meat, because society is in a way demonized meat at this point, like red meat is bad for you. It's got saturated fat and cholesterol and it's going to kill you, right? Like this is the stuff that we have been bombarded with in our media, in our educational systems. We've been taught to fear saturated fat and cholesterol. So a lot of people will feel better when they first become a whole foods vegetarian. Okay. Like if you decide to become a vegan or a vegetarian and you're eating processed foods, the likelihood of you feeling better is pretty slim. But for those people who do make the switch to a vegan or vegetarian diet with a health consciousness mindset shift with that, eating whole foods, it can be very easy to assume that when you feel better, it's because of the absence of meat. But actually, why you're feeling better is because of the addition of more nutrition that comes from eating natural whole foods. So if you go from the standard North American diet to a natural whole foods diet that's excluding meat, you're going to feel a lot better, even though you're excluding meat, because you are now eating more vegetables than you ate before. you're cutting the processed carbohydrates like the white sugar, the white bread, the white flour, the white rice, the white, all the things, right? The white salts. So of course you're going to feel better. And when that's attributed to meat being, taking away meat, but not from the transition to a whole foods diet, then you can be very stuck on the idea that you have to maintain your health and to have the healthiest diet possible, that it has to exclude meat. So this was the mistake that I made. And I had a symptom that came up within 1 year of becoming a lacto-vegetarian that I just ignored. Like, I noticed it, believe me, I noticed it, but I ignored it. And I'll share with you how it got worse over time. So the first symptom that I had from this deficiency of protein and minerals is I had, like, my whole entire life growing up, I had only 2 very small cavities. Okay. So then I became a vegetarian, and of course I felt better because I was eating this natural cleansing diet, a whole foods. But what happens is there's a point where you have cleansed enough, and actually you need regenerative nutrition. And so I guess I had already gone past this point to some degree, because the next time I went to the dentist, which was within 1 year, I had 7 cavities. And I was like, I had the thought then, I was like, how could this possibly be? Like, I'm eating the healthiest I've ever eaten in my entire life. How could I now have 7 cavities, right? But I had already bought into all of the perspectives that I had learned in these books, Diet for a New America and Diet for a Small Planet, which I believe are absolutely written with the most positive intent. And I'm absolutely behind there not being any factory farming in a large scale type of farming. So I'm totally behind it, and I'm completely sympathetic to why people choose to become a vegetarian or vegan to avoid killing animals. It makes sense, right? But I mean, there's a whole other context there, even to discuss. So I'm going to try to get into as much as I possibly can in this first training, because I just want to speak to the elephant in the room, right? Before we go on to talking about the particulars, the health benefits of protein and making choices in terms of quality protein, we got to get all this stuff out of the way, right? That there's a lot of tension around these days. So I ignored that symptom. And then, I also had another symptom that I ignored. And this symptom was hypoglycemia. So I was the kind of person who had to snack all the time, because if you're hypoglycemic and your blood sugar is not stable, then you will want to eat constantly to keep your blood sugar up, right? But then, of course, if you're eating a vegetarian or vegan diet, and that diet is primarily carbohydrates, there's a lot of sugar, natural, what I call inherent sugar, right? Like, there's sugar that's added to food, and then there's inherent sugar, and that's the carbohydrate that's broken down into glucose when you eat it. And so basically I was like constantly spiking my sugar all day and night because I wasn't eating a diet that was balanced for protein. If you're not balancing for protein, you're going to be literally displacing all that protein with carbohydrate. So my blood sugar was off. It just exacerbated all my hormonal issues, but I just didn't think it was that serious, right? I think it's easy to just kind of minimize hypoglycemia, right? But everything, health and disease is on a spectrum. So if you have hypoglycemia one day and you don't attend to that, it eventually becomes diabetes, right? And if you don't attend to that, then it eventually becomes lose a limb, right? So these little symptoms that our bodies give us that tell us that something isn't right, they have to be acknowledged and listened to. But I was stuck on my dogma, which was a vegetarian diet is the healthiest diet in the world. And so there's nothing I could do possibly better than I'm already doing. And that made me believe that these symptoms weren't that serious. I don't know. I just minimized it. So then let's go, years later, 25, I have my first child. And after I give birth, I have a friend who wants me to put hair extensions in her hair. So I'm spending hours, braiding hair, putting these extensions in her hair. and I go and bite down on a bobby pin, and my tooth chips, right? There we go. This decline in teeth, right? What builds teeth? Minerals and protein. So there was that. Then I remember I went to a cafe restaurant in Winnipeg called Mondragon, and great vegan restaurant, love it. So amazingly delicious and full of natural whole vegan foods, which is of course what you want to eat if you're eating vegan, not processed vegan foods. But bit down on this fork by accident, chipped my tooth again. Hey, Marcel. See a little heart. Yeah, the first kid, right away you could see when you're pregnant, you're getting more minerals, more protein, more vitamins, more everything. You require so many more things. So I got even more depleted during pregnancy. By the time I had my second child, my teeth looked translucent. I literally, they looked like I would drink some wine and they would turn purple because they were so translucent. At that point is when I started, and I couldn't lose weight after the second pregnancy. Obviously I wasn't as heavy as, being pregnant, but I stabilized at about 155 pounds, which is about 25 pounds heavier than what would be like a natural healthy weight for me. And so there was that. That was one sign of something also going wrong. Okay. Now keep in mind, my diet hasn't changed. Okay. So when I'm 22 and then I'm 30, 27, I think 29, I have Jasmine. My diet is still the same, natural whole foods, vegetarian diet, including dairy, but not eggs, not meat. But suddenly I'm overweight. Okay. Now this diet, when I first switched to a natural whole foods, vegetarian diet, I lost the extra weight that I had been carrying from eating the standard North American diet, right? So I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Like all I have to do is eat a natural whole foods diet and I'll never have to worry about my weight again. Famous last words, right? So I basically just accepted that as well. I accepted that, okay, now I've had 2 babies. I guess this is just what happens after you have babies. You have to now be overweight because, again, I had this mindset like I am eating the healthiest possible diet that humans can eat. And I've already done everything right. So if this is the results, then I'll just have to accept that I'm going to be a little bit overweight after having children. But at that time, I just kind of started like switching into the idea that there were some benefits to animal foods. Okay. So, once you start having some signs what you're doing isn't working for you anymore, you start to become more open, right? So I became familiar with the Weston Price organization, which is an organization that promotes the ancestral wisdom around nutrition and traditional food prep methods in nutrition and in cultures around the world. And I started to learn things like, in order to absorb minerals properly, I need to have more saturated fat in my diet. And learn things like, if a person is not 5 years old yet, or they have a thyroid issue, they're not going to be able to convert beta carotene into vitamin A, right? Because there's like a whole bunch of different nutrients that are not found in plant foods that are essential, or they're not found in amounts that are enough. They're only found in appreciable amounts in animal foods. So I started to learn these things, started to question the vegetarian, vegan dietary dogma that as long as I was eating enough calories of whole foods, or if I combined proteins together, then 100% I was good, right? Like I could just trust that I would be getting enough nutrition. I questioned that, right? And primarily because of what had happened to my teeth. So I started looking for like, how can I add? And I started to lose my night vision at the age of like 33. I'm literally not able to see at night anymore. That's a vitamin A deficiency. Because, you know, if you're not actually consuming the fat with your food, you're not absorbing the minerals properly. And those fat-soluble vitamins come with those foods that come from animal foods, like vitamin A, preformed. So I started to incorporate grass-fed animal dairy into my diet. I went from, you know, just eating regular dairy to incorporating grass-fed dairy. So now I was getting at least some vitamin A and vitamin D preformed from my animal foods, because when animals are raised conventionally, not like in a like a factory farm, and they're not outside grazing on grass, they're not producing dairy that has as much vitamin A and vitamin D in it as a grass-fed animal. So I actually was able to restore my night vision just by incorporating grass-fed animal dairy. So that was wonderful. But I still took I'm not sure if this would have worked on its own or if I just sped it up because I added a supplement, but I fixed my teeth, guys, at the same time. So I incorporated these grass-fed dairy into my diet. And then I also took this amazing supplement from Inotech, which is a company in Winnipeg, Manitoba. They have a homeopathic calcium magnesium supplement. And in combination between making those dietary shifts and taking that supplement for 3 months, my teeth went back to normal and I no longer had like clear teeth. So that's really great. So, you know, we can do damage by making maybe not the right choices for us, but we can always come back from it. There's always, you know, you just have to put the effort in. So now here's the main piece of this that I want to share, especially for someone who maybe is recognizing that the diet that they're eating isn't working for them anymore. And this goes the other way too, right? Like if you're eating the standard North American diet, or if you're eating like a carnivore diet or a keto diet or something, and it worked for you before, it was so amazing and you got on the bandwagon, right? Because you're like, oh my God, this like changed my life. But what you don't realize is that you change and your dietary needs change. So what works for you at one time that isn't necessarily the right thing for you at another time. So in my early 20s, when I made that switch to a natural whole foods vegetarian diet, the reason it brought balance back to my body allowed me to feel good, to never have to miss a day of work when I had mono, to release all that extra weight without dieting or trying in any way, shape, or form, is because that's what I needed at the time. I was coming off the standard North American diet and I needed to cleanse. I needed the nutrition that comes in vegetables along with the energy of what vegetables do. So vegetables and fruit are cleansing. So when you are toxic from having eaten a poor diet, such as a standard North American diet, you do actually benefit from eating a vegetarian, vegan, or primarily plant food diet for a certain amount of time, because that will restore balance, because you've gone so far in one direction that in order to come to the middle to have balance, you need to do something else that's more extreme, right? But the problem is when we think it's something that we have to hang on to forever, despite it not working anymore for us, right? So, you know, we could go into it, and we probably will, as we go through these different trainings, we'll talk about the different controversies around, you know, diet and what's the right diet and everything. But at the end of the day, you have to realize that there's an expert out there for everything, and they all have evidence, and they all point to research, and they all point to studies. Okay. So at the end of the day, you really have to do that like experiment of one, right? See what works for you and understand that it may not work for you forever, right? So this is how the same vegetarian diet that got me healthy and got me to release my extra body fat in my early 20s had me obese by the time I was 36. It's because it wasn't right for me anymore. Okay. I had cleansed myself enough. By the time you start having children, you need building nutrition. You need that regenerative nutrition. And that's what you get from the animal foods, the protein, the soluble or the fat soluble vitamins and the minerals that are really high and easily absorbable in animal foods. Okay, so it's not that plant foods don't have minerals, but they are not as easily absorbed. And most plant foods don't come with a lot of fat, so it makes it harder to absorb. Plus, they come with anti-nutrients that will sometimes even bind to those minerals so that you can't absorb them if you don't prepare that food properly, right? So that's another thing. Like most people, when they learn about vegetarianism, they don't also learn about traditional food prep methods that would deactivate those anti-nutrients. So, it was like kind of a double whammy, right? Like we need these cleansing elements that are in plants, but at some point we can become deficient. So kind of think of it as like, looking at your own self, like where are you at right now? Do you need to cleanse or do you need to build? Okay, so a lot of people who are already really thin do not need to cleanse anymore. Okay, they need to build. And surprisingly, people who are overweight, they need to cleanse, but they also still need to build, right? Your body, if you're not getting this good quality, all these essential amino acids, all these nutrients that you can only find in optimal amounts in animal foods, fat soluble vitamins, fat soluble minerals, you can be overweight and look like you're not, lacking for food, but you could be completely lacking for nutrition. So your body interprets that as famine. And when your body believes that you're starving, even if you're eating a lot of food, right? You may be getting calories, you may be getting, it's often carbohydrates, right? Especially if you're on a standard North American diet or a vegetarian or vegan diet, but you're not getting those deep, nourishing, building, restorative, and regenerative nutrition. So the obesity is a response to being starving on the inside for nutrients. So consider where you're at. A lot of people who have like thyroid, adrenal issues, and they're also overweight, they're actually lacking deep nutrition. So it's not necessarily going to be solved by cleansing, okay? All you have to do is go from the standard North American diet to a whole foods diet and keep the animal products in, no problem, and you're still going on a cleansing diet, okay? Because you're going from the standard North American diet to a whole foods diet. That's a cleansing diet. But there's different degrees of cleansing, right? Like you could go on a raw food vegan diet, and that would be more cleansing and more healing than a vegetarian diet would be, right? So there's different, there's like a spectrum here. So you kind of have to figure out where you're at. Do you need building? If you need building and cleansing, then ideally you'd be on more of an omnivorous diet, right? If you need to cleanse because you've just been eating like the standard North American diet, you're super toxic, but you have a lot of energy and you can tolerate really cleansing foods, like, somebody who has that energy, right? Like, so the people with the endocrine issues, like the thyroid and the adrenal stuff, they don't have that energy. That's a sign that a super cleansing vegan or vegetarian diet is not going to be the best thing for them. Okay. But if you are like, you got red skin and, loud voice and you talk fast, right? You have the energy to be able to go into like a cleansing diet, such as a vegan or a vegetarian or raw vegan diet, and do fine for quite a while. That might be just what you need to get back into balance. But how long are you going to do that for is the question, right? As soon as it stops working, as soon as you stop feeling good, that's a sign that, now you need to switch. Okay. Maybe you're cleansed enough. Now it's time to rebuild. Some people need to focus on the rebuilding so that they actually have the ability to cleanse later, right? Get that deep nutrition in, then focus on the cleansing. So it's not like animal foods are bad or plant foods are bad. It's just they have their place, and where you need to balance things is based on where you're at, right? So just keep these principles in mind, right? So cleansing versus building. Also look at the stage of life that you're in. right? So for example, when I was young, in my 20s, I wasn't building any babies. I had lots of vitality. Cleansing was just perfectly fine. It was just what I needed. It gave me more energy. But then later in life, it no longer had the same effect. Because after having 2 babies on a diet that was already deficient in protein and saturated fats and the minerals and the fat soluble vitamins, I was in a more deficient state than ever being pregnant. And so the last thing that I needed was to be on a cleansing diet. So eventually I got the point, and I started to add animal products back into my diet. Now, I'm going to explain to you why I ended up obese. So on the same diet. When I was in my mid-30s, I had a different muscle mass than when I was in my 20s. So this is one of the reasons, right? So this is the same for everyone. As you age, unless you are actively maintaining your muscle mass, you're going to have less muscle mass. And the less muscle mass you have, the less ability you have to tolerate carbohydrates. So when you eat carbohydrates, which a vegetarian or vegan diet is primarily carbohydrates, you will end up storing that extra carbohydrate that you don't need as fuel as fat, because there's no place to put it. You don't have any muscles to store it in. Your liver can only store so much sugar. And remember, when I say sugar, I mean inherent sugar. So there's sugar in, you can add sugar to your coffee, but you can, chew on a lentil and it becomes sugar because it's a carbohydrate. So most people are in their 30s and 40s, and they're eating like a 20-year-old who is an athlete, right? Who can absolutely tolerate high amounts of carbohydrates. And so combined with my tendency towards hypoglycemia was just absolute, and not getting those fat soluble vitamins and minerals and protein was an absolute setup for massive hormone imbalance, right? So combined with stress, right? Have 2 babies, the stress of life, and this is common. And you'll see this. There's so many women who don't change their diet after having children, but they can't get off that last 25 pounds after having babies, because there's just too many compounding factors that come together that make it so that their body has its own reasons to actually hold on to fat. So for me, there was a combination of things. There was the tendency towards hypoglycemia, and having been a vegetarian compounded that, right? Because I was eating so many carbohydrates. Now, if you're eating a ton of carbohydrates, you're going to be having to displace the protein that you would eat from lower calorie food with and more dense foods with higher calorie and more amounts of. You're just going to have eat more food, right, to get your protein. So your body's always going to try to get the optimal amount of protein because it's that important. So what you're going to do is you're going to end up, in order to get that, you're going to eat a lot more of these starchy carbs, like, rice and legumes together, for example, or rice and beans together, or bread and peanut butter together. And there's a lot of inherent sugar in there. And that inherent sugar becomes fat if you don't have the muscle mass for it, or because you don't really move yourself, right? So everybody's eating like athletes. They're eating carbohydrates the amount of an athlete, wondering why they're overweight. Okay, so a vegetarian diet will make this astronomical because you have literally displaced carbohydrate protein, protein from primarily carbohydrate sources. So you're still gonna get your optimal protein, but you're gonna be eating too much in order to do that, based on where you're at in life. Okay. So that was like, it was kind of like a shitstorm for me, right? It was like the hypoglycemia, my biological father is an diabetic, and I'm of indigenous ancestry. There's a bunch of different things that come together that make me as an individual more susceptible to being diabetic or pre-diabetic. So most people don't realize, though, is this is applicable to everyone in modern society, because none of us can tolerate massive amounts of sugar and carbohydrates. Okay, there's nothing in nature, no time in nature, that you would eat the way you eat now in North American society, where you just have a plethora of carbohydrates that are super starchy at your disposal, fruit all year round, right? This is not really natural. This is not a natural state for humans. So there's a lot of like, oh, we need carbs. This is natural. Just eat like these vegan and vegetarian diets. That's a natural amount of carbs for humans to eat. I don't believe it is. I'm going to talk more about that in tomorrow's training when I share with you what I actually did to release the weight without dieting. But at the end of the day, we're displacing protein, like good sources of quality protein, by eating a high carbohydrate diet. And it would be better to optimize your diet for protein and then build your carbohydrate content around that once you've already optimized your protein. That would be creating a more balanced plate, and that would actually be more of a match to how you would eat in a natural, more of a traditional way or natural environment. Okay. Yeah, so that's basically like the story of how I got to the age of 36 obese, even though I hadn't changed my diet, because I was really stuck on some principles that I believed were the absolute truth, and I wasn't willing to question, and I was even willing to ignore my body's signals just because I believed this thing. Okay. Amanda says, I got it. I'd love to know what the specific thing was that you got out of it. Because there's so many things there, right? But yeah, if I could leave you with like, the most important things is trust what's actually happening in your body. Like trust how you're responding to something. So if it stops working, then realize you need to shift something. And that every diet is actually helpful in a certain context, building around the protein base, she says. Yeah. And I'll definitely explain that as we go along. And tomorrow I'm going to sort of like give the overview of how I made that shift from the vegetarian diet to one that includes animal foods and prioritize protein first. So it's just really not getting stuck on it, and just realize that you really do have to understand that when somebody goes through something and it makes them feel better, they think, and I myself included, like I would be like so surprised if my 20-year-old self knew I was doing this live stream, right? Because my 20-year-old self would be like, oh, what? She's eating meat? And she's like telling other people that they should reconsider not being a vegetarian or a vegan. Like, oh my God. Yeah, my younger self would be like shocked at that. But anytime you do something when it's appropriate for you at that right moment, you just think that it's going to be the right thing for everyone because it helped you, right? But there's a lot of different things to consider about some of the dogma around this idea of the best diet in the world for people is being vegan or vegetarian. So one of them is, this is really like kind of crazy, guys. So, and please, I am not knocking plants. I love plants. I still eat a plant-based diet, but I still build it around protein. Okay. It's about the amount, right? Like how much you need will change like I said, in different periods of your life. But where was I going with that? Dang, guys, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. Okay. So plants. So one particular plant, wild cabbage. Okay. You think to yourself, like you should eat Brussels sprouts, and you should eat broccoli, and you should eat kale, and you should eat kohlrabi. Okay. Because they're all really healthy foods, right? The brassicas, you need to include these in your diet. But did you know that those foods are all been hybridized by humans from one little wild wild cabbage? Because we have changed food so much that we don't even know what is natural anymore for us as humans. We have forgotten that we are human animals. Okay. So if you look at the grocery store and you see all the fruit the way you see it and all the vegetables the way you see it, and you're being told that this is what you have to eat and this is like the optimal diet for all of humanity forever, you have to realize that's not even natural. Okay. I'm not saying it's bad for you. It's good for you. It's got all sorts of phytonutrients in it that are like really beneficial. They help you cleanse. And they're good for you. Okay. As long as your gut is okay when you're healthy. So, and here's another thing. Some things are good for you when you're healthy, and some things are not good for you when you're, that are healthy when you're not healthy, right? It's all so dependent on the unique situation of the individual where they're at the moment. Okay. So I love all those vegetables, but if they didn't even exist before we hybridized them, there's no way that you can logically convince me that I have to eat that. Okay. Same thing with the fruit. Look at just literally Google this when you get off of this. Go look at like fruit as it's been hybridized through the ages. A banana had hardly any starch, mostly like lots of seeds in it, and wasn't super sweet. Right? So I'm sure that you don't need to eat a banana the way a banana is right now. Okay. So if we didn't have this industrial food system and these techniques to make fruits and vegetables taste more palatable and be more filling tasting because the starches, we would probably not even dream of wanting to be a vegan. That's not natural either, right? And then you have to also think, like, if you have to take supplements to do something in a healthy way, that's also probably not how you were meant to eat. That's not probably nature's design for eating. Okay, so, and that's not to say that you'd have to eat like a ton of animal products just because that is natural. There's just like, there's a balance for, where your body's at. And we all have like those unique individual natures of things, right? And all these different factors that come together that make us either do better with more animal foods or less animal foods. But at the end of the day, from me looking at things from like a systems perspective, looking at all the different things, I'm pretty convinced that we are definitely not meant to just eat as a carnivore, and we're definitely not meant to just eat plants. Okay. From all sorts of things, right? Like just, you can have fun. Go look at all the different things. If somebody's promoting veganism and they'll be like, your intestines are like a herbivore. Somebody's promoting being a carnivore. They're going to say that your body is meant to only have animal meat. You don't need to have all these nutrients that are less in meat, for example, like vitamin C or other things, because when you're not eating carbohydrates, they'll say that you don't need as much, right? So there's all these different perspectives out there, and you should look at them. And I'm not here to tell you like what the ultimate truth is. And that's something you really should understand at any point when you're, researching nutrition, is that everybody has a position and they believe they're right and they have evidence to support it. And sometimes they have studies and sometimes they have personal experience, right? And they even believe what they're saying and they're coming from a great place. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to have some sort of like logical framework within to look at it. So I'll tell you what mine is. Besides my own personal experience of like how something's actually working for me at the time or not working, which I had to learn the hard way, right? By, having my teeth break and stuff like that, and getting obese, is that I always kind of look at like, is this possible if I wasn't relying on technology, right? Like would it be possible for me to be vegan if I didn't rely on the industrial food supply? If I didn't eat have to like get all these like packaged foods, if vegetables and fruit hadn't been hybridized, okay? If I was living in Hawaii, would be a completely different story than where I'm living right now, right? If you're living in Canada, well, the weather is a lot different and there's not a lot of fruit here. But of course, if I were to be eating fruit here, it would be the fruit that was in season here in the summer and the late or the early fall, right? That's when you'd be eating fruit. So I'm always kind of like, judging it against that, right? Like, okay, is this possible? Or do I need this industrialized technologies to make this work? And if I have to take supplements, I'm not sure if that's how things are meant to be. And I'm not, saying supplements are bad. I use them, right? I told you a story about how I added supplements to help me restore my teeth at the same time as adding those fat soluble nutrients. But that's because I had to kind of undo the damage, right? But what if we just started to think like, okay, if I was healthy, how do I maintain my health? Versus a lot of people do another kind of weird thing is where they eat like as though they're a sick person, right? Like they eat in these extremes, fearing certain food things because they're trying to avoid getting sick, right? There's like, all that's doing is holding sickness in mind. So there has to be a way to just really get like open about all the different possibilities and trust that there is a time and a place for every diet and every perspective applied in certain unique situations. And don't get stuck on one way and be open, right? Like for example, if you are somebody who is vegan and you are losing your muscle mass and you're super skinny and you're not absorbing nutrition, no matter how much you eat, right? You eat tons and tons of food, skinny, can't hold it, right? Because oftentimes when the digestive system isn't healthy, people get health conscious, right? And so then they get led to veganism, vegetarianism, which only makes a gut that's not healthy less healthy, right? Because all of those anti-nutrients that are difficult to digest, right? Notice how when you eat a bunch of carbohydrates and you don't have the digestive capacity for them, like legumes, whatever, that you end up with gas, right? Well, that's not a good sign. Okay. It means you're not digesting your food that well. And so unfortunately, it attracts people that are health conscious and then they don't exactly make the right choice for healing their gut. Okay. So here's another example on the healing your gut side of things. So there's 3 diets that will help you with healing your gut. One is a specific carbohydrate diet, which is an omnivorous diet. And it has a lot of animal foods in it, but only specific carbohydrates. Works like a charm. Lots of people have done it. They've healed themselves of IBS, Crohn's disease, all sorts of different problems. Even mood disorders are actually related to the gut. So depression, schizophrenia, all these different things, okay? Go back to the gut. And people have used a diet like that to heal themselves. Has meat, has fermented dairy in it. Has vegetables in it, okay? And then there's people doing the carnivore diet. They're also healing their gut to some degree, right? Because prior to eating the carnivore diet, they just lived like diarrhea was a way of life. And now they just eat meat, and now they have no diarrhea and they feel amazing. Okay. So then the assumption is that that the carnivore diet is the best diet in the world and it heals everything. Right. And then there is the raw vegan diet. The raw vegan diet will also heal your gut. A vegetarian diet and a vegan diet will not heal your gut, but a raw vegan diet will heal your gut. Okay. So, it's not the absence of meat or dairy that's healing your gut. What's actually in common with all these three diets is they're all missing one thing that harms the gut. And that is your starchy vegetables and your starchy grains and legumes. That's why it doesn't make sense. It's not a raw vegan because it has no meat is not why it heals the gut. Okay. And it may actually be like one of those diets, if you have intestinal issues, might be the right diet for you. And they're all right. They're all correct. They will all heal that problem. Okay. You just have to see which one works for you. But then the question is, if you're healed, right? If you do it in a way that actually restores the health of your gut, then you should be able to introduce all natural foods in moderation without harming yourself. That's true healing. But if you have to avoid something forever, that's a sign you still have more healing to do. And unfortunately, that's our society, what it does. It literally just, when you find that some food doesn't work for you, you go, oh, well, that food must be bad or must be bad for me, and I'll just never eat it again. But the thing that was going on underneath that caused you to have the health problem in the first place is still going unchecked. You're just not aggravating it as much with that, taking that food out of the equation. And then it'll just continue to get worse. And then some other food will bother you, right? So that's the perfect example of how three different diets, they're totally different on the surface. You think that the difference is the meat and the dairy, but actually they have so much in common, and what they have in common is no starches. Okay. And you'll see, actually, if you go through I followed quite a lot of experts in the vegan world for a long time, and I've seen a lot of them with intense health problems now. I've seen them do like cooking videos and look at their nails, and it's full, their fingernails are full of white spots. That's a sign of calcium or zinc deficiency. It's doing something good for too long will turn into its opposite. It'll have a negative effect when it goes out of balance, right? Everything is looking for balance in this universe, right? So when you are extreme one way, like I said earlier, standard North American diet, you need to eat more cleansing diet to come back to the middle, right? That is such a key thing, because people always get so confused about this gut healing. So the question is if you are on a carnivore diet and that's working for you now, why can't you reintroduce the other foods? Why can't you reintroduce some vegetables into your diet? Right? Literally the belief system in the carnivore world is completely opposite to vegan, but they're both super extreme, right? So from the carnivore perspective, the plants, those phytonutrients are there trying to kill you, right? They're literally trying to poison you so that you stop eating them. And when your gut is already inflamed and not healthy, yes, that's what's going to happen. It's going to feel bad, and you're going to get more inflammation by eating plants, right? But I think of those diets, those gut healing diets, as temporary measures that should result in healing. That means you should be getting the healing. So temporarily, the inflammation goes down, you get the healing, and then you slowly start to reintroduce foods at the rate that your body can handle the reintroduction of foods, and then, restore your digestive health. Another example, a lot of times people assume that meat is not good for them, or fat, because they have a sluggish liver that is not producing enough bile, or they have gallstones and they can't digest fat well, right? Or they have a distaste for meat because they have low hydrochloric acid in their stomach. Okay, that's pretty much something that I think that from my own perspective is probably why I, as a child, did not like meat, right from the beginning. Okay, so I was raised on formula. So imagine spending the like I was never breastfed at all. So I would have started off on like synthetic nutrition, like not even real nutrition. So that would potentially could be a reason why I didn't have optimal digestion to start, right? And then it becomes a cycle. So the less nutrition you absorb, then the less nutrients you have to build the enzymes to help you absorb that nutrition, right? So then it becomes this revolving cycle. So what most people will do is be like, oh, I can't digest meat well, so it's bad for me. Or I can't digest fat well, so it's bad for me. No, that's not the cause of the problem. The meat is not the cause of the problem. The fat is not the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is that there's something going on in your body that actually is asking for your attention to be healed so that you can eat like a healthy person, which is eating a balanced meal. Balanced for you, for where you're at. Okay, I want to just go through my little list here to make sure I just quickly covered some of the topics. And like I said, I'm not here to tell you what you should be doing. I'm just here to give you some more context and things to think about so that you can make your own decision about, what you want your diet to look like. And I hope to leave you with more questions than answers, right? So that, you can listen to your intuition and how your body responds to food, not, experts and what they tell you should be doing. Make sure you do that experiment of one on everything. And then when it stops working, because things are changing, then you switch to what now creates balance in your body, okay? So you don't want to go for too long on a cleansing diet because at some point you're clean enough and what you need is to restore nutrition. And you don't want to get so like animal foods are everything and plants are terrible, and just only do the restorative, regenerative, rebuilding type of nutrition without also doing some cleansing, because this society we're exposed to toxins all the time. Even if you're eating the perfect organic sources of food, there's no way that pesticides from the air or some industrial toxin is like your food is protected from that. Like, just kind of end of story, right? Like we don't have control over everything. So we have to control the things we have control over. Okay, so I just want to look at this list here so I make sure that I am providing everything that I promised. Okay, so this whole cholesterol and saturated fat and meat gonna kill you thing. So this is like something that people are completely confused about, and I recommend that you follow up with some resources. Do I have this book here? Okay, well, actually what I'm gonna do is as I'm doing this series, I'm putting everything on a download page where you get these as replays, and I'm going to put like links to things for you to follow up on and things that we talked about so that you can kind of go on your own way and learn. But I think this topic of cholesterol and heart disease is really best spoken to by medical doctor, cardiologist type people who really know the truth about this, because as much as you guys know that I'm here to tell you like what I believe to be the truth, that I have your best interest at heart, not to, like only can I be wrong, but all these medical experts can be wrong too, right? I mean, nutrition science, like we didn't even know what a vitamin was until 1911. Okay, so 100%, no matter what anybody tells you, how much they believe they know, of course, there's always going to be things that are exceptions to the rule, okay? Or new things that we learn. But the reason I think it's really great to learn from medical doctors about this is because we are so programmed to fear fat and cholesterol and worry about, getting heart attacks from eating it, that I feel like because we've been programmed from authority on that we need to deprogram ourselves with authority. Okay, so I'm going to send you, like on that download page, I'm going to put a link to a book called The Cholesterol Myth so that you can follow up with this on your own. But here's the long and the short of it. The long and the short of it is that when people have cholesterol building up in their arteries, it's not because they eat too much cholesterol. Your body can produce much more cholesterol than you could possibly eat, because cholesterol is so important in your body for healing and as the basis of your hormones. Okay, so if you have your arteries are starting to tear, okay, they are literally being damaged. Why would they be damaged? They get damaged from free radical damage that comes from vegetable oils, sugar, and excessive insulin in the bloodstream, because you're constantly eating so many carbs. Okay, it becomes caustic on your arteries. They start to split and get also stiff, and the cholesterol comes there to be like a band-aid, okay, to try to patch it up. So this is one of the reasons why when people do these diets where they heal themselves, even if you went vegan, okay, you could go vegan. I have actually had this, like, I've seen this happen, okay? So I was in some group, and this woman she had just watched like one of these vegan documentaries, and she was like, okay, I'm going to be vegan. So she became vegan. It was probably what she needed, at least temporarily, right, to cleanse herself from the standard North American diet. And she was on this forum going, oh my God, since I became vegan, my cholesterol went way up. I don't understand. And I understand. It's because your cholesterol goes up when your body's in healing mode, because her body was using cholesterol to heal. Okay? It's part of healing mode. So the cause of heart disease is not cholesterol. The cause of heart disease is damage to the arteries. And then you have to ask yourself, what is causing the arteries walls to be damaged that is making cholesterol go and build up there? Okay, that's the question that you have to ask. So the cholesterol is kind of like a bystander, right? So another example that people often give, just to help you picture this, remember it in your mind, like when you see an accident on the road, and every time you go to see like there's a car accident and you see the ambulances there, and you're like, holy crap, it's all these car accidents and deaths are due to ambulance drivers, because every time somebody dies in a car accident, ambulance drivers are there, right? It's that kind of thing. So it's called the cholesterol myth, and I'll put a link to it so you can research that yourself, right? It's really, really important to like take charge of your health, right? Don't just hear something and like be like, okay, that's it. This is the new bandwagon that I'm jumping on. Because like I said, all of this science changes, right? Like years ago, if somebody would have told me that I would not only not be a vegetarian, I wouldn't have believed it, but that I would even consider trying a diet like carnivore, where people just eat meat. There's literally, you can go on YouTube, search it. There's people that have been just eating nothing but meat for like 8 years. I think someone maybe up to 12 years. Okay, by all standards, from what I can see, the person looks healthy. So who am I to judge, right? Like what is working for that person is working for that person until it doesn't work. So Paracelsus had a saying, was he who heals is correct. And I love that quote because it allows us to let go of our dietary dogma and realize that if what you're doing is giving you the results that you need, then it's the right thing at the right time, in the right situation, right? And then that allows us to open ourselves up to more options for healing, right? Like if you are literally suffering and not able to digest food, and you've got diarrhea and you're losing all your muscle mass, but you believe that vegetables are everything and that's the healthiest food for you to eat, you're stopping yourself from getting the nutrition that your body needs, right? Like you could literally just even incorporate small amounts of grass-fed animal foods and be creating more healing in your body. Or for example, like the specific carbohydrate diet, like eating specific vegetables that are easier to digest versus other ones until your digestive system is healed and you can eat more, right? So yeah, it's really important not to block yourself from healing. And, you know, try these different things, right? Sometimes we use extremes to create balance, right? Like a lot of times people are all like moderation, and moderation is great if you're already in balance, right? It'll maintain your balance and it's a good thing. But if you are out of balance, then you have to think moderation in moderation. there's, something that you need to do. So if you, and if you're getting stuck with your health, it's actually one of the best things to do is just do something different. Do something different than you've ever done before, because your body it's like it recalibrates when it gets, it's almost like it just gets stagnant, right? Like if you just keep doing the same thing over and over and you're not getting results and your body's just stagnant and everything just like gets heavier and it's just not, functioning optimally, and then you just change your diet completely to something totally different. It's like it wakes your system up and it wakes up your vital healing capacities. Okay. So mostly what healing is a combination of eliminating all the things that are in your way that are stopping your body from being able to heal, and giving it all the things that it needs to heal. All the nourishment that it needs, all the things, the raw materials that it requires for healing. And when you get the thing that's blocking it out of the way and you add the raw materials, then you're literally just creating like that vitality in your body, and it's your body that does the healing. You don't have to do anything. Healing is pretty much a passive process after that, right? And in fact, most animals, they know what to do, right? They just drink water and go fast, and then they heal because they sleep. They sleep and fast, and their body heals. So there is many, many different ways to be healthy and to heal yourself. And I hope if anything, that what you got from this is just to open your mind to recognize there's just so many different ways of thinking about things. And at the end of the day, it's what's actually working for you in your body, where you're at right now. And then be open to as many forms of nourishment as possible. And then remember that it's not just food that nourishes us, right? We have there's things that are that are impeding our vital healing capacities that are can be emotional, or like mindset blocks, or spiritual, or traumas, right? Or a lack of pleasure in life, a lack of community, right? So when we're talking about deficiencies, it's not just vitamins. It's all these things, right? When we bring them all together, then we allow our healing capacity to, it literally just builds our energy. And actually, the healthier you are, the less you have to be concerned about, the details of nutrition, because you just kind of already have a high vitality, and everything you eat, you can digest and absorb so easily, and you can get all the nutrition from the food that you're eating, right? Whereas on the other hand, if you're not well and your digestion is poor and you're eating the best organic food in the world, you might not be getting the nutrition that you need from it. So yeah, remember that it's not just food, that it's everything, right? Like it's everything combined together that helps us to be in our optimal state of health. I just want to see if there's anything else. Okay, so I think I've covered everything except for the last one. Okay, so this is also super controversial. So we'll just end on one more thing that gets people upset. But anyhow, we got to talk about it. And that's the idea that plants, eating a plant-based diet or a vegan or vegetarian diet is better for the planet and for animals. Okay. So, I mean, just like, at face value, it's like, of course, it's better to not eat animals for animals, because that is, nobody wants to be eaten, right? But at the same time, we really have to look at, like, again, back to cycles of nature, like what makes us, like, why are we not considering our own selves as part of that picture, right? Like, we are a human mammal, and that means that our nutritional needs have value as well, right? So nobody's upset, like I feed my cats meat, and nobody's upset with my cats, that how evil of them to eat meat. In our natural cycles, we have always eaten meat. There is no vegan society in traditional in history. There are some places like the blue zones where they don't eat as much meat. They, according to the research that I've done, it's like 5 times a month or so they would eat meat. And then of course, then they would have like eggs and mostly goat dairy, sheep dairy in those cultures. Yeah, even ones that were like close to being vegetarian ate insects. So we don't have a history of that. So again, it's something that, is coming from this modern context of, we have this industrialized based food society. We can have all these alternatives and products and stuff like that. But the thing is that if we don't know what our world really, because like most of us, I came into this planet in the year 1976. Okay. So I don't really know about what life was like prior to that. So, I could fall for anything, right? Anything written in the history books or whatever. Like, that's all of us. We just assume that we can trust everything that we know. Because we assume it's true, right? We don't expect that we're not being given the full picture, right? So there was a long time where we were told that basically there's not enough land to, feed the world, and we have to have genetically modified foods and all these things, or people are going to starve and stuff like that. But we didn't really know, we didn't remember what life was like on the planet and how we kept things in the balance, right? So it's easy to just buy into all these things. So one of the things that we think about is that the reason that people don't want to eat meat is so that they're not supporting the animal industry, which is producing carbon, right? And that kind of makes sense on the surface, except for that in the natural way of things, when we do regenerative farming, which includes animals, which literally pack down the grasses, they keep the carbon in the soil from their trampling around on the grass. And same with us. We do it too. When we walk around, we have a place in the ecosystem too. When you're a kid and you always want to pull those little seeds off of things and then throw them, that's you being an animal, part of the ecosystem, keeping everything in balance and spreading seeds so they can grow. Those animals are keeping the soil healthy. They're keeping the carbon in the soil. And when the soil is healthy and it's not, damaged by modern farming, monocropping of vegetables, and grains and things like that, then the soil is healthy and it sequesters carbon out of the atmosphere when we have healthy soil. So do we want to just stop eating meat, or do we want to restore our planet? Okay, so it's easy to just not do something, right? It's easy to just be okay, that's bad. I don't do that. Therefore, I'm better than everyone and I'm doing my part. But is not doing something really doing your part? Or is doing something doing your part, right? So what doing something would be looking like this. It would be going, okay, I want to support regenerative farming because I know that if I buy vegetables and meat from farmers who respect and restore the land while they're farming, keeping that soil healthy, and those animals are grazing out on grass, they're happy, they're living the life that they lived, then that's doing something, right? That's supporting that the people who are doing that, the regenerative farmers and people who do permaculture and all that kind of stuff. And then you can do it in your own micro level, right? Even what's so amazing about regenerative farming is it even changes the microclimate around your area. So what about going out there and buying shit land and restoring it, learning permaculture, bringing the animals back on the land, right? I don't want this world of industry where we're just eating all these fake meats and processed vegan meat alternatives and become more and more industrial. I want to see land that is restored and full of animals again. I would love to see buffalo roaming again, right? To me, that's doing something about it. Growing your own garden, learning about these things, sharing it with people. Okay, because monocropping vegetables, shipping them all around the world is not better than purchasing local meat that's grass-fed from local farmers, right? Because that monocropping, when you till in that soil, all the little animals that get killed and then their home is destroyed so that vegetables and grains can be grown, when animals could just eat grass, the way they were intended to, that's better for them, right? It's better for them to live like that. It's better for us when we consume the food that they provide. So no, I do not think that choosing not to eat meat is going to solve any of our problems in society, because again, go back to nature. How does nature make it happen, right? And I'll provide some more links as well. So at the end of this, I'm going to put the link. So if any of you are watching this, but you didn't actually sign up for the series, sign up for the series, because then you can go to this download page where I'm putting all of the different like resources and things that you can follow up on. This is just amazing, and it's so incredible, and it's so inspiring what can be done to restore land. That's one of my goals in life, is to literally buy some land and restore it, bring the animals back, live in harmony with nature to the best of our ability. And it doesn't take lots. I mean, you could do that on a couple acres, right? And it doesn't have to be like, and the best thing about it is it's kind of like the more ruined the land is, the less expensive it is, and the more like amazing it is to restore it, knowing what, has happened to it, because so much has been clear cut and destroyed, and the topsoil's blown away. And, so just to stop eating meat is not going to help any of those real root problems with things, right? Was there anything else? I think that's like, gives you just some things to think about when it comes to like, just come back to like, what is natural for humans? What do we have power over, to make the biggest difference in our own lives? Where do we have control? Let's exercise that control where we have it. There's some things we don't have, control over, and we just have to let that go. But, once you know something, then, you can do better based on new knowledge, right? So let's look at things in the context of what's best for us as humans, and for animals, and for the planet, symbiotically together, and not think about it like we're going to sacrifice our own health in the process, because that's not necessary. We're sort of being like told that it's necessary, that this is what we have to do to heal the planet. We have to stop eating animal foods. This is the new trend, right? The new polarity out there is go vegan. Let's start eating insects, and let's start eating lab grown meat, and then all these meat alternatives. And I really don't think that is the solution. And it's definitely not a health solution. And if you're healthy, you can do a lot more to make a big difference in the world than if you are not healthy, because there's a lot of things that when you're deficient in them nutritionally, that will affect your mood and your motivation. And whether you can even stand being social with people. It's one of the issues of protein deficiency, for example. And we'll be getting into these as we go through the series, so you can learn more about those deficiencies and what they do. But yeah, when you're healthy, then, you can make really conscious decisions. And then you have the energy to give back and make a difference. And so instead of just avoiding things, looking at being part of the solution, right? So so that is basically how I ended up obese on a vegetarian diet. At the end of the day, it just really put me in a place where my body started to become insulin resistant, couldn't tolerate carbohydrates, just started gaining tons of weight, threw my hormones off really bad. When you need the saturated fat, the cholesterol, the protein are essential for your hormones. That in combination with extreme high carbohydrate diet, my hormones went nuts, and I literally gained another 20 pounds after that. After having the 155 that I settled on, gained another 20 pounds, less than 2 months. And then I woke up, and then I was like, oh yeah, this diet is not working for me anymore, and I have to change something. So in tomorrow's session, I'm going to share with you how I woke up to knowing what was wrong, and how I changed it, and was able to lose weight without dieting by prioritizing protein. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, and I'll put the link here as soon as possible for getting on the list so that you can get the resources from this training. Thanks so much for joining live, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.